Influencer Entrepreneurs Podcast with Jenny Melrose, where I strategize with business owners on how to grow and scale their businesses to hit their income goals. This is episode 313 of the Influencer Entrepreneurs Podcast with Jenny Melrose. Today, we're going to be diving into how to write copy that sells without being sleazy with Jackie Sunga. I am super excited about this conversation. She did such an excellent job really breaking down how writing copy on sales pages, emails, social media doesn't have to be so difficult. And she's even giving us a pre-launch checklist and workbook to be able to work through so that we really can start to think about the ideas that we have, the pain points that we are solving, and the transformations that we are going to be making for people with our product or service. Now, in this episode, you're going to hear me talk about the fact that a lot of times when I'm working with clients, we find that the product that they're creating sometimes doesn't have that unique ability, that little bit of something that sets them apart in the marketplace. If you're to that point where you're trying to figure out what's going to be the best product or service to fuel my audience, to help them with a problem that you know how to solve, definitely make sure that you grab my product guide. I will link to that in the show notes, but you can also send me a DM at Jenny_Melrose, and we will make sure that we send that directly to you. All right, you guys, let's dive in. Hi, Jackie. How are you?
Hi, Jenny. I am so good. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Of course. I am so excited to have this conversation about how to write copy that sells without being sleazy, because I think that that's such a huge piece of what we as women want to make sure that we're not being overly sleazy when we are trying to sell. But before we jump into that, can you introduce yourself and your business to my audience?
Of course. So my name is Jackie Sunga, and I am a conversion copywriter and brand voice specialist. I specialize in sales copy for launches as well as website copy. And I love helping impact-driven course creators, coaches, consultants bridge the gap between their expertise and their audience with customer-first messaging. And whether I'm teaching emerging entrepreneurs or I'm writing for established brands, I love helping my clients attract their perfect fit people and sell with integrity.
I love that. That's actually one of the big things. I don't use the word integrity. I always say kindness. Everything should be done just with kindness. I feel like I'm constantly telling my kids that, and I'm constantly telling my clients and students that. Just put it out there. It'll have that ripple effect.
Yes, I love that. Selling with kindness is something everyone should do too, for sure.
Yes, no, absolutely. So what are the questions that we can actually ask ourselves about our products to write our copy for our sales pages? Because a lot of my listeners are bloggers that are starting to have their own products and services, and they have to do sales pages and they freak out. And I always hear, I hate doing this. I don't know what I should be doing. Do you have questions that can kind of like get those creative juices flowing?
Ooh, yes. So many questions, actually. So one of the first things that just to get your mind going as far as, if you're like, I don't even know where to start, I'm feeling super overwhelmed, start to ask yourself how your offer is different from other offers like it and other competitors like it. And so some things that are really important, especially if you are launching a digital product, you're writing a sales page, people really love storytelling. And one of the most important stories that people like to hear about is how you even had the idea to create that product, right? Was it because you had a really poor experience with somebody else's, program or what have you, and you decided, you know what, I have so much more that I can say about this. I have expertise and experience about this. I know I can make something so much better. Or maybe you were like, I'm so passionate about this because a client of mine had such a great win, and I just loved how that helped that person transform their lives or whatever. So I was like, why don't I share this with all these other people, right? So a client win story, it could be, an experience you had, like you gave someone a 1-star review. Another story is of course, how you came up with it, but also how your process even came about, right? Did you, I like to think about brands like Dyson, right? From like early on before the 2000s, they had like these blue box fans, right? And now we have like these really cool fans that don't even have like any blades or anything in it, right? So how did you go from the blue box fan to I don't even know the name of it, but have you seen, what fans I'm talking about, where it's like,
Yes.
they don't have any blades inside them. They look so cool, right? So in that way, like how did you refine your process to make it what it is today? So those are some really good story prompts that I like to start with if we're thinking about a brand new offer. And then also, of course, how is it different? We can definitely go dive deep into that, but those are some high level things to get started with.
Okay. So I am going to kind of try to give an example to my audience, because a lot of them are food bloggers or my DIY bloggers. They're coming up, a lot of times they're coming with an ebook. And if it is a food blogger in particular, they like to put together a recipe ebook because that's what they do. They create recipes. So when we're thinking about, because a lot of them already have these audiences and they know they could sell to them, but they'll put something together and it's not allowing them to be unique. That is the one piece that I often find with clients. I have to say, but those are just a bunch of recipes. How are you different? What's your level of what's the expertise that you're putting into it? What's going to make it different? So if I'm a cocktail blogger, am I telling them what garnishes to use, or the difference between the different levels of top shelf, low shelf gin or vodka or whatever it might be? But I do think that a lot of times, not only are they thinking, how am I different when they write that sales page, they also need to think about it when they do their product creation. So I really, when you said that, I'm like, oh my goodness, we're always talking about this when we talk about product creation. So it becomes so much easier to then write that copy when they've already thought about it. And one of the things that we talk about too, and you kind of touched on it, are that pain points. Are there questions that we can ask ourselves about what pain points to really hit on to get them shaking their head? Yes. Oh my goodness. I can see myself.
Yes. And this has to come from, I love to get the best copy. The best copy comes from what your customers are saying. So whether you are talking to people who have already bought your product and ask them, what was going on in your life that really motivated you to download this ebook or purchase this ebook or insert digital product that you're creating here, right? What was that purchase trigger, essentially? You don't have to use that word, but when you ask it in that way to a past customer, that's going to give you insight into like the thing that motivated them, that maybe they were at the height of like their confusion or their overwhelm of just like, I just have no idea. Like I need something, I need to get something done in like the next 30 minutes, or I need to create a cocktail in the next like 90 minutes because my friends are coming. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Or like maybe it's because like they didn't have time at all to plan for their party and they need something that they can figure out. And it's not going to take, more than like a trip to the liquor store. And like, it's not going to take too long to prepare at all. Right. So it's like, if you can ask your customers that, and even your prospects, right? What was going on in your life that motivated you to buy this thing or to opt into my lead magnet? And you can even do that if going on one-on-one calls and asking these questions is not a thing that you can do right now. You can actually have that one question on your thank you page of your lead magnet as a way to. That's one of my favorite secret tips to give my clients. Because they will give you their exact answer of why they looked for that thing in the first place. So as far as asking ourselves, that's asking your customers, but asking yourself, right? Think about who you were before you created that thing. What were you struggling with right before you decided that? It can be hard to remember who you were before you created whatever offer that you have now, which is why I always like to recommend talking to customers. But if you remember what you were even struggling with and how you would describe yourself and what was frustrating about about that experience, that can give you a lot of insight to what happened before. And, when it comes to things like a cocktail recipe, that doesn't sound like you could have a problem, but there are, like, for example, like coming in with the social aspect of it, of just like, oh, I really want my friends to feel really impressed by this party that I'm hosting, but I don't want them to know that I didn't spend a whole lot of time preparing for it. Right.
Yes.
That's people desire, right? On the other hand of that, it's like, what do your customers say that they really want, or what do they value? And maybe, like, is it people who really like to have lavish parties for their friends, right? Do they like to have that? So that's an example of something that may not necessarily be viewed as a problem per se, but in some cases you can still label it in that way.
Yes, that was solid gold when you said to be able to send them on the thank you page, or even in that first email that you send them in your welcome sequence, asking them, what was the story? Why did you decide to purchase? Because I think we try to get testimonials a lot of times from people that purchase things. Nobody likes writing a testimonial because we don't know what to say, right? It's very awkward. It feels very forced. But if you ask that question, you're so right. You hit directly on those pain points.
Exactly. And again, on the opposite end of that is what did you really want to, what would you imagine your life to look like after this? Like, what are you working on now that you have purchased this? Because then if you can ignite their vision in terms of like their imagination and what they want once they're done, that will give you insight to the transformation that they're really wanting.
So good. Oh my goodness. So what is the most important element of copywriting? I feel like that's a loaded question.
Oh my gosh. Well, I love it. I love this question. The most important element is certainly listening to your customers from a place of empathy, because if you can really understand what they are going through, empathy is timeless, right? And that's where, if we get so afraid of being sleazy, well, the sleaze comes from putting a product before you are addressing and understanding and listening to someone's problems, right? So that's where the sleaziness comes into play. But if you show a customer that you understand, when you can speak in their words, not like on social media, but like the way that they would talk to their friends about their problems, and you can see the patterns that repeat. And essentially, if you find yourself thinking in their thoughts and you are speaking like your customer, right? Don't even worry about writing anything yet. I think sometimes people think about writing and like pen to paper or like typing out an essay, and that gets people feeling really anxious. But if you can just talk like your customer or speak in their words, that's a really important prerequisite, because that will allow you to assess yourself of just like, am I really empathizing with my customer? Have I listened to them enough? And we can talk market research all day long, but at the heart of it, it comes down to, do you understand? And are you able to speak like them?
Yes. And I think that's where sales becomes easier, right? Because when it is coming from a point of, if I don't put this out there, those people stay stuck because I know how to solve the problem. That would be selfish. Now it becomes, oh, I'm not being salesy. I'm solving their problem. I'm putting it out there for them. They need to know about this. Everybody should know about this. It's going to make their life that much easier in whatever way it might be.
Absolutely. 100%. I agree with you.
Excellent. So should your copy, do you feel, change based on where it is, whether it's on a sales page, emails, the marketing on social media? Does the copy kind of change a little bit?
Oh, 100%. Yes. So I want to reference this very well-known author. His name is Eugene Schwartz. He wrote Breakthrough Advertising. And if your listeners aren't already familiar with it, there is essentially this outline of a journey that a customer goes through. So at first, you will have people who are not even aware that they have a problem. So I'll give you an example of someone who has a headache. So if someone doesn't even know that they have a headache, they're unaware of their problem. Then you have someone who's problem aware, who they know they have a headache, but they don't know that they can drink water, or they don't know that Advil or Tylenol exists, right? Then you have solution aware people who like now they know that they have a headache, and they know that they might be hungry. They might be dehydrated. They might just need to take some Tylenol, right? And then you have product aware people who then they're shopping between like, okay, Advil, Tylenol, generic ibuprofen, right? So what you want to do in your marketing for social media, for example, this is where you want to talk about, we look at things like brand awareness and social media engagement, and you measure those things like how many people are really engaging with this post. So then that's where you would want to move someone from problem aware to solution aware. And I'll give you another example as well too. So let's say you are, and it's just a top of mind example. So this is the quickest one that I have, but let's say you're a woman who struggles with pelvic pain, right? And all you know is that like you're struggling with pelvic pain, but you have no idea that there are pelvic PTs out there, or physical therapists out there. So if you're a PT who wants to move someone from solution aware, then you would position yourself as like, hey, like, I know that you're struggling with these things, and this is actually what you could do. These are some things that you could do to actually relieve that pain, right? So that's social media awareness. And then when we get to things like your sales page and your sales email, that's where you can measure things like the conversion rate of the sales page, the conversion rate of, or the opt-in rate of a landing page if you're opting into a lead magnet. And so that's where we want to think about like, how can we, what are the things, the metrics that you can measure as it relates to all of the things that they would have, all of the stages a customer would go through before the sale, right? Because when you get to the sales page and the checkout page, right, all of that copy will directly relate to the sale. But when you get to things like social media, right, that's where you want to ask yourself the question, are we making people aware of their problems and aware that we are the brand, the best brand to help them, or be the best solution to help them solve those problems?
I've never heard someone describe it like that. I love it.
Really?
Because it makes so much sense. No, I honestly haven't, because I think about that customer journey. And to me, it's always, well, they just don't know me enough, right? We talk about like the like no trust factor, but to think of it as being problem aware and solution and how to actually get them to that point, it just makes so much sense. I love that. So smart. So are there easy ways to add a sense of urgency or social proof to copy without being sleazy?
Yes, I love this question. Well, and it's just such a good question because urgency and scarcity, right? We don't ever want to have a sense of falseness, right? That's also where people start to lose trust with marketing and marketers in general. And it gets really gross. Because then, you're using deception as part of your marketing, and everyone can tell, right, if something is not true. So that's where we want to come back to, what are our customers actually saying about A, what they want, and B, what they're struggling with, but also what they've already tried that didn't work for them. Because if you're doing something that's always available, an evergreen product, and obviously there's not, whether it's an ebook or not, and you don't want to have, lead, what is it called? The deadline funnel, the automated thing that's like, the fake closed cart. That's where you want to really tap into understanding and assess, do I know what my customer really, really wants? And what is this pain that they're so ready to be rid of that false scarcity and false deadlines isn't going to matter, right? So for example, I saw this designer who was selling these, she was selling a program about teaching designers to open up a template shop. And so one of the ways that she had a great sense of urgency was, well, the urgency is, can you afford to take time off without having a panic attack about where your money's going to come from? And I was like, wow, like that's a really good way to put it, because, if someone is a designer and they are taking, only one-on-one clients and are diversifying their income, all of the pain that's aware they're pain aware when they realize, oh man, like, what if I get sick? Or what if like this client decides to ghost me or whatever? I don't have anything else. And so in that particular business model example, she didn't use any timers or any sense of false urgency. because then she really knew her audience. And again, it just really has to come back to how well do you know your audience and how well have you delivered on your product too? Because if your social proof shows, right, past customers really saying compelling, a compelling transformation, like that's going to speak to your prospects really, really well. Social proof is one of the strongest factors in converting without being, again, salesy or sleazy.
Is there a way to get social proof other than emailing saying, hey, can I get a testimonial?
Ooh, good question. So I like to be creative in the ways that I've done it in the past, and the ways that I've had clients do it in the past is, it could literally just be a conversation. So if you do like, and I highly recommend having, these conversations with people because you can get such rich answers from people. So you can frame it as like a market research call or not even a market research call. I wouldn't say that. I would say a conversation. Sometimes I hear the word feedback or survey, and that can be like, oh, like that sounds like work, but it could be framed as a really conversational way to be like, this is a favor from a friend to a friend. And if you really want to incentivize people, I highly recommend that too. Maybe if you have a shop, give them something that they don't already have in your shop. That's not going to be it's not going to cost you anything. Some people do like to give Amazon gift cards, but have something, again, and it has to come back to what is what do they really want, and do I have something that's also valuable to them that doesn't cost me a whole lot, whether that's time or money. I think that's where you want to decide which one do you want to give up, your time or your money, whether that's an incentive like an Amazon gift card or like a coupon for your store, or again, your own time. But in that way, I know it can be tough to chase people for their testimonials, but I think even just doing it in the middle of working with them or like immediately, it can be as easy as just writing down some of the really great things that they have to say and just having a vault of testimonials or just a happy folder of things that people have said positively. And then asking them for permission if you can post that with their name and photo, or just the text. So hopefully that was helpful.
Yes. No, that was definitely helpful because I have clients asking that all the time. And they're always like, I don't even like giving a testimonial to you. They'll say to me, and I've worked with you for 5 years. And I'll go, I know you're paying. But it is trying to find those things. I love the idea of using something that you already have in your shop as a product that you can offer up to be able to get that. So, so good. So tell me more about your freebie that you're offering to my audience. We're going to link to it in the show notes.
Yeah.
But tell me a little bit more about it.
Yeah. So let me give you a story first, a client win that I had of how this even came about. So one of my very first copywriting clients, she and I worked together for 3 months to launch her course. It was about $300. And I made sure that we had really strong messaging 3 months before cart open. And that was where we were addressing things. Well, I don't want to give it too much away, but we worked together for 3 months. And on the first day of open cart, my client had achieved her goal, her sales goal. And for the rest of the launch, she had 3x'd her goal. So I was like, okay, what were all of those things? It was a situation where she had the most number of sales on the first day of open cart. So I realized we went back and we realized like, what was the messaging that we shared? It was really important that we hit specific topics. So my freebie is all about the messaging that you want to ask yourself to come up with before you actually introduce a product. So like I mentioned before, we have problem aware, solution aware, before product aware. And so instead of like talking about like, oh, I have this ebook, or like you can get these number of modules in this digital course that I have, right? You want to have a conversation about the specific topic that you are teaching about. What are the objections that someone has about a topic, and sell the ideas have your audience buy into ideas before you sell them on a transaction of money. And I'll give you another example here too. If I wanted to sell a course about LinkedIn marketing, but my audience is full of people who are like, LinkedIn is too corporate-y and too impersonal, those are not going to be a good fit to, introduce your paid product yet. They first have to buy into the idea that LinkedIn is actually casual and it's a place where you can have very intimate, casual conversations that will lead to sales. And so having that in your pre-launch content where you're just introducing new ideas to people, my freebie helps people walk through all of the different ways that they can brainstorm those angles.
Okay. And the part that I loved, because of course I went and took a peek, it really forces you to do the work. It has spots for you to be able to write. So my little students that love to have that teacher moment and be able to sit down and workshop it out, this is what this pre-launch checklist is going to give you. It walks you straight through it so that you know exactly what needs to be in there.
Yes. And I am so excited. So if anyone has any questions about it, feel free to send us an email. More than happy to improve that to make it more valuable for people.
Perfect. So now, where are the best places to connect with you, Jackie?
I love Instagram. So my Instagram handle is Jackie Sunga Co. And I'm also exploring other new avenues like Twitter. I think Twitter's like making a comeback, honestly. So Twitter might be a place I'll be hanging out if I drop off on Instagram for a season. And I'm also going to be exploring YouTube in 2023, but Instagram for now is my favorite place. Pinterest, obviously, of course, I'm also a blogger. But for sure, on the gram is where I'm most active.
Okay, excellent. We're going to link to those in the show notes. And everybody knows too that my listeners, that you can always send a DM to me or to Jackie, and we can make sure that we send you directly to that pre-launch checklist so that you can work through and be able to have those pain points and problems answered for people on your sales pages that you do create. Jackie, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me and my audience. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you for having me, Jenny. It was my pleasure.
Of course. All right. Well, that was such a great episode and such a good conversation about copywriting, which for a lot of us can be very overwhelming. We're creatives. We don't want to have to sell things. We want to just be able to say, here, come and get this. And if you want to take it, and we like to be all nice and sweet about it. We can still be that way while showing them how the pain points that they have can be solved. And Jackie gave us some great ideas on how to be able to get that social proof, those testimonials that we're constantly looking for. So if you haven't already grabbed her pre-launch guide, make sure that you do. You can send me a DM on Instagram. I am also doing something a little bit different for you all. I am, for the month of October, we are putting it together, October, November, December, moving forward. Whenever you happen to listen to this episode, if you have not already written a rating or review, all you have to do is send me a screenshot at Jenny_Melrose on Instagram of that rating and review that you've written on either Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening to your favorite podcasts. And once you send me that rating and review, you will be entered to win one of my workshops at a $97 value. So make sure that if you haven't already written one, it will help me be able to continue to get great guests on the show. It helps the show social proof. So as a thank you, we're going to be raffling off, based on those reviews that come in, to one person every month, one of my courses at a $97 value. All right, you guys, until next time, I will see you all then.